So the first thing I'd mention, so Lauren, you mentioned, so you got a sentence up there and it says, to a degree we've changed. Now keep that topic in mind, and we can do almost an entire workshop about that one sentence, because that is really the gist of this practice. That's the reason I use the word transcendental, because on a very fundamental level, imagine that you've been living 30 years, and during that 30 years, your attention, for the most part, is habitually turned in on your own cognition, your thoughts, or whatever. Typically, it's going to be thought-based, but it can include some other aspects. So let's say that you've gone 30 years of doing that, but now you start to pay attention to the moment on purpose, and you do 2 years of that. That small little difference is going to accumulate into the most dramatic difference that you can possibly imagine, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Lauren? So it's that's kind of the way that this practice works in terms of long-term change. Is it's really in increments, 2 degrees. And that's actually going to be a really important point that I'll touch on at least just a little bit as we go on. So hopefully this works, because I'm still going to use, let's see what happens when I do share screen, because I have 2 different. Yeah, that seems to work, doesn't it? Do you guys see the share screen?
Yep, we have it.
Okay.
Blank,
My
but
phone.
it's there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. My phone wants to hesitate a little bit, but well, Shayna's phone rather. But all seems to be working. So what I wanted to talk about today will kind of relate to what Lauren was talking about, because T approaches behavioral and cognitive change very differently than other things do. And by other things, I mean maybe other forms of therapy, other practices, and things like that. Just trying to get this nice and set up here. I have a tripod. I could use that later. Okay, so Gene and I, we were kind of chatting a little bit before everybody came in, but we started to talk about setting up our practice for the day. So that's something that we've been talking about over the last 2 weeks. And yesterday we really talked about one of the most important points in the T practice, and today we're really going to dive into it, but it's productive dialogue. So that is one of the first 13 points in basic alignment, is productive dialogue. And that's what we talked about in depth yesterday. The phone just is like slowly slipping. It's like I'm going to slowly lean until I fall. In increment, 2 degrees, it will slowly lean until it falls. So yesterday we talked a little bit, and keep in mind that what we talked about yesterday was with the beginner perspective, because it's basic alignment. Today I'm going to talk about productive dialogue, and it's not going to be so beginner-esque. Basically, I'm assuming that you have a little bit of a background and you have at least some experience with some of the terms, and specifically the way that I'm using the terms. So not just the terms, but the way that I'm using the terms. All that makes sense so far? All right, so how did you begin your day? I'm just going to start with some questions so that I can drink some more coffee, but we've been talking this week and last week about setting up your practice from the moment you wake up, from the moment you go to bed, and intending the practice in a more focused way. So who has done that? Who attempted to do that? How does it look? What's going on? Anyone want to add in?
Yeah, I started the morning, got up late, and opened my eyes and recognized that class was beginning soon, but I hadn't started my practice yet. So I brushed through it. I immediately grabbed a point of attention that I could use for the day. And I visualized this for no good reason. And I practiced to make sure that I could access it whenever I needed it. And I keep it right over here over my left shoulder behind me. And so I just practiced visualizing it and seeing it there. And I was pleased to note that I didn't have to judge it or evaluate it or name it. I just felt it there behind me. So that was my first. And the second, I just reverted back to the one I use most frequently, the dialogue, which is a breath, which provides me some space because I feel that immediately. And then I say to myself, peace is available to me right now at this moment. Those are the only two that I did this morning.
Sounds good. So what we're talking about here is this is our day, and it's being represented by just one straight line. And I kind of have my phone in the way, so bear with me here. And so what I'm talking about, and this is kind of what Gene is talking about, he gave some details in how he did this, but the moment he wake up, the moment he wakes up, he establishes his practice. Whoops, is that doing anything? No? Okay. So this is also a way that we could look at the practice. T will just say to wake up and establish your practice. Hydrostasy, I will recommend you doing the longest reach, highest vision, deepest love, because it's what I did. You can fill in the blanks with whatever the hell you want. So your deepest love probably shouldn't be, well, no, deepest love could be the same as mine because it's this life, this opportunity to exist. So deepest love could be the same as mine, but highest vision and longest reach, those shouldn't necessarily be exactly the same. So there's still some opportunity for individualism, to where you can kind of add your own spice and variety to it, and that's great. But hydrostasy is going to be a little bit more specific because it's what I've done. It's exactly what I've done. Hydrostasy is a blueprint of exactly what Ernest himself did. And it's weird talking about myself in the third person, but there you go. And T is the framework, the basic methodology and kind of a framework. So the framework says when you wake up, the moment your eyeballs open, our practice begins. How do you want to do that? I don't care. Go do something. That's T. Hydrostasy, you've woken up. Where's your highest vision? Where's your longest reach? Where's your deepest love? Where's your breath? And then I go immediately into the 4 modes practice with belly breathing. I'm super fucking specific here. I'm not, kind of just reaching for things that I may have kind of done, sort of, if I remembered quasi. No, I woke up, highest vision, deepest love, longest reach, and I take very deliberate breaths from my belly because I'm laying down. And then I begin exactly what I'm recommending to you. Who did that today?
I did, but maybe not in the same way.
That's okay.
So woke up and straight into the practice because I know that the morning is my time for the sad feeling. So that's my battleground. And I must admit, yesterday with writing it all out on the card, what I done a couple of days ago was write out lots of tricks of attention on a stiff card, and I keep that with me. But I can pick some off that. So when I woke up first thing, I use the bathroom and then come back to bed. But on the way to the bathroom, I'm using my feet and fox walking. For it's not an ensuite, so it's a wee bit of a distance. So I'm feeling the carpet under my feet, and doing my mantra. So my mantra this morning was, this moment, precious moment, step right in front of me is enough. When when my mind wanted to race on into the day, I'm thinking of the step right in front of me. Then I get back into bed and put my headphones on and my blackout mask, and I do breathing I do 2 or 3 rounds of the Wim Hof breathing, which is what I've been doing. And I do that and have some music on, and that's very present for me. So that's a good. And once that's done, then I can float for a wee while in my head, sort of meditating, if you call it that. And then getting up and using my mantra. And I had picked out the color green and the shape of squares and smooth things as my 3 things for today. So then I'm getting ready to go for my swim, and I'm doing some other things like my 18 gates and things as I'm going along. So those are the kind of things that I have set up for my day today. And so far it's been really good. But writing it down has been the key, because it's in front of me now. I can see what I'm supposed to be doing, because it's not perfect and I'm forgetting at times. But it feels much better. It feels safer, is what I could say. There's no a couple of days before that, when I wasn't writing it down, it was patchy and wishy-washy. And writing it down, I'm finding, is really really helpful for me. So that's what I've done so far today, and it's been good.
Okay. So there's quite a bit in there. Now, Ita kind of has established 2 points, and that's the first 2 points. So if you're brand new at this practice, perfect, because this is well, what does a day of tea look like? You know, if you've been doing this practice for a long time and you're kind of half-assing it, you're really going to see that with what we talk about today. So, and if you are, it's, you know, your garden. I'm not, unless you've asked me specifically, I'm not going to recommend behavior or tell you about yourself. That's not my job unless you've specifically asked me to do so. But so Ita has established her practice the moment she woke up. She kind of talked about that. And then she set up her toolbox, or she kind of looked at her toolbox, and she's talking about writing her tricks of attention down. So if this is tea, then I would tell you, in some way, remind yourself of your toolbox. Gene, in some way. You could use a notebook, you could use a note card, you could write on the wall, you could use a cell phone note, whatever you want. If this is hydrostasy, I would tell you specifically to use a note card, because you can take a note card with you throughout the day, and hydrostasy is what I myself did. So hydrostasy is sharing exactly what I have done with my own cognition, and then T is the framework. So it's kind of 2 different things. One, you can just really just fill in the blanks like Ita just did. She just Wim Hof breathing. I don't do Wim Hof breathing, but that's okay. Ita is intending the Wim Hof breathing deliberately and on purpose as a part of her practice. That's T. Hydrostasy, I would recommend being even more specific and having a note card with 2 sections. So Jerry and anybody who likes to take notes, I hope these are noteworthy, because this is important stuff for this practice. So in that note card, we're going to have 2 key attributes, or 2 key things that we're writing down. One of them will be our specific points of attention. And in hydrostasy, for example, I have the golden line, I have body awareness, I have proprioception, awareness of my body in space and time. I am aware of light sources. I do defocused vision. I have a smooth breath where it's not necessarily Wim Hof breathing. It's just breathing with the least amount of muscular tension. And that's the breathing that I do. But I wake up and I immediately go into my practice. I do not waste a second, not one. Sometimes I can even start in my dream before I wake up, and that's even better. But I can't recommend that, because I don't know if that's teachable. So all that stepping, my phone's gonna fall over. Shayna got heavy feet. No, that's Bailey. Bailey got heavy feet. She's all muscle. Shayna giving me a look. Heavy feet don't mean you're heavy. Just how you're walking. So on the note card, if we're doing hydrostasy, I would say on one side of the note card, write down points of attention, deliberate points of attention, the color blue. Maybe you're going to look for cars with 4 doors. Maybe you're going to do defocused vision. Maybe you're going to split the horizon. Maybe you're going to look at shadows. Maybe you're going to look at leaves. Maybe you're going to look at clouds. Maybe you're going to pay attention to your feet. Maybe you're going to pay attention to your breath a little bit more as often as you can remember. Write that shit down. Be specific. Otherwise, you may find that you have coasted through the whole day and you've essentially just hustled yourself. And we don't want that. So on the other side, though, I would recommend voice of power mantras. And by voice of power, I mean productive dialogue. Ita gave some examples of things that would be really good for her relative to her life experience, and you can do the same thing. So she said that she wakes up and that's kind of a battleground for her. Typically, thinking begins right away the moment she wakes up. So she has specific mantras for that specific occasion, and I think that's great. I think that's a little bit of segmenting, that's a little bit of identifying and approaching your battlegrounds. So if I were going to recommend for Karen to create a complete tea practice throughout the day, the first 2 things that I would recommend, number 1, wake up and engage. The second you wake up, not trying to change anything, we're not trying to control anything, we're just looking to step back into the power of deliberate attention the moment we wake up. There's not a second to waste. And immediately identify, after that, identify your toolbox. Maybe you already have it written down and you're just going to remind yourself. Maybe Gene already has a note card by the bed, and when he wakes up, he just looks at it and he's like, okay, this is what I'm doing today. It doesn't have to be brand new every single day. I mean, that's a lot of basically chasing tricks of attention, and that's not necessary. The more you do this practice, the more tricks of attention will come to you. You'll be like, oh, I can use geometry as a trick of attention. That's interesting. I can use differentiation. For example, when I look out of a window, there's a difference between outside and inside, and I can pay attention to that differentiation. Does that make sense? These are little subtle things that we can use as deliberate, specific points of attention. So I have recommended 2 things. If you haven't done them today, your practice is probably going to be wishy-washy. You're going to get halfway through your day, you're going to realize you haven't really done shit. You're looking at the news, you're looking at this, you're looking at that. How could this happen? What's going on in the world? Yada, yada, yada. And before you know it, you haven't really done your practice. And you're a leaf at the mercy of the wind. And if you're watching the news, good luck with that. You're going to find yourself lost in cognition. Does that make sense so far? So we have 2 points that we've talked about so far. We're really going to get to the juicy one, which is the voice of power, because that is the most important aspect to all of this. And there's a reason for that, but we're getting into it. I think Bailey would like to re-enter the domicile. Are there any questions about that? I'd love to answer questions. So we've talked about 2 points of your complete practice throughout the day. Waking up and establishing your practice, and then establishing your points of attention, and on the opposite side of your note card, establishing some quotes, some mantras, some things that you can tell yourself today that are really going to be like, yeah, I can do this. This is my practice. I know what I'm doing. I can do it. Does that make sense?
It's good to know that it's not, you don't have to have brand new tricks every day, because if they still feel fresh, it's only when they start feeling repetitive. But like you said, the new tricks will come to you if you keep practicing. New things will appear in front of you, you know, or you maybe get a wee bit excited about finding something that could be a potential trick.
True. Or, excuse me, I agree. looking to get away from the word true. So I agree. All right, so in this complete view of a practice, I also recommend, so you might not even be out of bed yet with what I've recommended so far. Like, you could still literally be in bed, and this is as far as we've gotten in our practice. But I'm going to recommend that you identify your battleground right away. And this is not a focus on lack. This is not focusing on what you don't want. It's identifying an area in your life where you have accumulated more resistance. Remember, the voice of power will just tell you what's what about the present moment. And it will tell you what's what about these battlegrounds too. No, that's not right. Identify battlegrounds. And you could call them whatever you want to. These are just areas of our lives where we have accumulated more resistance. And that's okay. We're all different. Everybody has a different spider's web that they've woven. And there's probably sections of your spider's web that isn't super elegant. And that's okay.
Yeah, because I can say for myself, like when I go to work, and it could be super small, like I tell people to do a lot. I have to tell people to do stuff at my work. Like I'm telling them they're doing stuff wrong. And sometimes they send me emails asking why I have to do this. And sometimes I react in my mind and I don't notice it right away. So that's like a battleground for me, because that's where I'm engaging in resistance. So I notice that now quicker, now that due to the practice and paying attention, to my body throughout the day. And I notice that quicker now. And now I redirect that. I don't have to react to these people. They're just asking questions. What their intentions are is beyond me. I have no idea. So I always remind myself of that when I'm responding instead of reacting now. So yeah, it's little things that can happen throughout your day that you're reacting to. And maybe sometimes you're not noticing that you're reacting to it, and it's causing a little tension in the body and a lot of resistance for the rest of your day. It takes you away from your practice when that occurs.
Yep. And also there was some voice of power in there as well, in what Shayna mentioned. She reminded herself, and I put this in air quotes, okay, but true things that she believes, things that she has observed and that she knows. This is a part of her knowing. For example, when the patient was yelling at me, I know that anything I say is just going to make it worse. So I repeat that to myself as a voice of power. I don't just hope. There's not just some abstract, oh gosh, I really wish this works. No, like it's going to work if I do it. I have to do it. And so I told myself in that moment as a mantra. I've been doing this practice for a long time now, and I still did that because it's an important point to the practice. Talking to yourself in a productive way. We talked about that, and we'll be talking about that on Sunday with the podcast as well. So does that make sense? And we've identified some battlegrounds. Now, I'm not recommending that you focus on it or think about it. It's just, and then I'm going to tell you also as we go along in this, what do we do in our battlegrounds? What is the point? We've identified it, so we know that later today we have a battleground going to the dentist. It's fine. You've just identified that as an area where you're going to need more practice. That's it. When it comes time to it, we're going to do more practice. So that's also an essential part of it. If we just identify the battleground and then we don't do anything with it, we're a leaf at the mercy of the wind. It would be like going into battle without your weapon. It makes no sense. Or going into battle without your plan. You had the plan, but then you just forgot it the moment you walked on the field. You don't have to look at this in a war scenario either. It's just one of my teachers, he would always talk about Chinese generals. And a lot of his examples included war and stuff, so I get it. I'm fine. So
Like
we
going
have
for
identified. Yes, Ida. Or,
like going
yeah, go
for a
ahead.
big shop, going for a big grocery shop and forgetting your list. You know, like you were saying, write it down and then you
Good
don't use
example.
it throughout
Yeah.
the day. If you don't bring your list with you, you're sort of hoping that you remember everything, but you'll come
hmm
home likely without half the stuff that you had planned.
Hey, I like that example. And actually, we could really extend the grocery list example, because although you had that list, maybe when you get there you realize you need a little bit of this and a little bit of that, so you're free to adapt as well. So yeah, I prepped. So how much time do we spend on our grocery list planning? Like we want to plan out everything else to the fine T, but with our grocery list, that's actually how planning could actually be with everything. Write that shit down and then move forward. I mean, we don't think about our grocery list all day. Like, I wonder if I forgot anything. I wonder if this is the perfect list. I wonder if this is the list that will achieve the perfect grocery shopping experience. No, we just make our list and we move on. That could be the prep for everything. Write that shit down and just move on. Okay, speaking of moving on, so we have 3 important points to a daily practice. This is a daily T practice that one can engage, and these are all the important points that I would recommend paying attention to. And I'm going to draw this one up further, and then I'll talk about it last. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about that line. I'll talk about this line. And this line is segmenting. And I really like what Donna said about segmenting, because segmenting for her is an opportunity to prevent coasting. And I like that because that's almost the opposite of how we would view a battleground. So on one end of the spectrum, you know, we have a business meeting and we're terrified of business meetings. That's a battleground. But Jean has the family coming over, and they're, you know, going to be happy times at the Jean household, and that's an opportunity for coasting. He could potentially forget his practice because the present moment is meeting him with his expectation, what he wants from it. It's happening. So that's like if we went on a vacation and we forgot all of our tricks of attention and we forgot our entire practice, you're going to end up what we call coasting. And that's, yeah, we feel good now, but we're a leaf at the mercy of the wind. And 2 or 3 days before the vacation, we're dreading going back to work. Or, you know, Gene is engaging his family and everything like that, but you know, he's not practicing, and then one of them, Gene would never do this, but maybe one of them spills some, you know, red juice on the carpet and he just flies off the fucking handle angry. Well, Gene might not have done that had he been doing his practice. Do you see what I mean? So there you go. All right. So I will ask any questions that you have about these first 3 points or 4 points. And is that 3? Yeah, 3. Okay, so this is a complete T practice. If somebody were wanting to establish a embodied mindfulness practice, and I want to point out, an embodied mindfulness practice will not make you whatever whatever image people have in their minds of a guru necessarily, or a deity, or you know, this figure that people have in their minds. I don't know about any of that. That's what people have in their minds. But a mindfulness practice can help you with more peace, more opportunity to adapt. And if we can adapt, we can change over time and we can learn. So this entire T practice is to help a person learn, become a better person. And by better, I'm putting that in air quotes. I just mean a person who's in alignment to the moment happening now. Rather than trying to resist it, rather than trying to fight it, we're moving with it. And that doesn't mean we're passive. If in this present moment, Gene is trying to punch me in the face, I'm going to redirect that energy. I'm not just going to stand there and let him punch me in the face, but it's because of my practice that I'm so present and I'm so able to adapt to those punches that Gene is throwing. Without the practice, he'd probably just punch me in the face because I'm too busy thinking about my problems or how to solve them or what the future might look like, or you know, what the past looked like and how it's making me feel right now. So If we're doing a complete tea practice, you will feel more peace. That's what I can guarantee. Everything else, I don't know. I'm not here to make promises, and I'm not here to necessarily sell virtues. But this practice will create more peace, because this practice helps the mind, the cognition, engage the world around them, and that is mindfulness. So we're doing an embodied mindfulness practice. It's not necessarily mysticism. It's not necessarily voodoo. It's not necessarily fancy, and it's not necessarily complex. It's actually quite simple. But it requires a lot of remembering. And that's what embodiment really is about. So we're talking today about a complete embodiment practice, a complete mindfulness practice. And so we talked about engaging this practice the second you wake up. I do. The second I wake up, I go into my highest vision, longest reach, deepest love with belly breathing. The second I wake up, I waste absolutely no seconds. It's my eyes are open and I immediately launch into my practice. And then I check in to my toolbox. These are going to be my tricks of attention for today. These are my most powerful mantras, the things that I can remind myself to go back to the practice. It's not necessarily positive thinking. It's not necessarily going from one type of thought to another type of thought, but rather I'm using my own words and my mind to point back to the practice. Where is your mind now? Where is your point of attention? Are you doing your practice? And so I'm going to talk about that more as we go along. And eventually it will go from productive self-dialogue to what I call the voice of power, a voice that is not in resistance to the present moment. And that's a little bit, that could get a little bit mystical, but it doesn't have to, because I can explain it. I can tell you what's going on. Okay, so, and then we had battlegrounds, and then we had segmenting, and I see some questions coming in. So we'll stop at segmenting. And so battlegrounds, I know that, oh, for example, what would be a potential battleground for me? There are some things at work that sometimes present themselves as a battleground. I'm around, a lot of people. I'm around patients and things like that. So sometimes there are battlegrounds that I'll have during my day. Those are areas where I have more resistance, because I am not Buddha. I am not pretending to be your image of perfection. No. If Ernest is your image of perfection, folks, we have a real issue at hand. We need to get some shit straight, because I am not your image of perfection. I have my battlegrounds. Sometimes I talk too much. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine Ernest talking too much? Oh, the heavens no. Right? So that's my battleground. I know it. And when I get into a battleground, I do more of my practice, but we'll talk about that in a second. Segmenting. Segmenting is almost the opposite of a battleground. It's an area where you feel like you could coast, where it's not that bad. So segmenting is doing some kind of formal practice halfway through the day. You know what, Lauren? Segmenting could be, that after lunch, you kind of coast. That's an area that's not that bad for you. So that after lunch, you're going to do these particular things. Not necessarily formal. It could still be just 4 modes. So Lauren, you could say, after lunch, I am going to do more deliberate sitting, more deliberate standing, and more deliberate moving. Because after lunch, I kind of coast. There's nothing really going wrong, but there's also, I'm not really engaging my practice. So segmenting is a great way to identify areas where you might coast. For me, and I'm using myself as an example, because I'm not better than anybody here. I'm either doing my practice or I'm not. If I'm doing my practice, I feel more peace. If I'm not, I'm probably going back to stupid shit, my old patterns of behavior that don't serve me anymore. It's the same dynamic, and I'm dealing with it and working with it just like anyone else. So segmenting for me is 5 p.m. I just hit a wall. I have all this energy throughout the day. I don't need 5-hour energy drinks. I don't need monsters. I don't need any of that shit. But 5 p.m. comes around and I'm done. Like, I'm cooked. I'm just ready to just sit and do a whole bunch of fucking nothing. That's usually when I would coast, because nothing is wrong necessarily. It's not a battleground necessarily, but it's an area where maybe I don't have as much practice because I'm tired. So I need to look at that and plan what I'm going to do with my attention. Does that make sense?
I also think that our day isn't just the same. We're not doing the exact same thing all day as well. So like segmenting helps, because maybe your trick in the morning, you're doing something different. Like I'm very active in the morning before I go to work. So I'm doing something different, and my tricks are a bit different in my morning practice than when I go to work and I'm sitting all day. So I have some tricks that I use in my morning practice, but when I go to work, I'm sitting like 7.5 hours in the chair. So the segmenting also helps remind you, like, you're not doing the same thing, and sometimes different tools are necessary for different types of situations.
Yes, and what you were saying earlier about good times being also potentially coasting times. This morning, I did all my things this morning, feeling good, keeping everything in check. Hang on a second. Just close that door. And I had plans for when I was in the water. I had written it down on the swim, and I remembered about those plans walking back up the beach when the swim was over. so and then I did a Donna, and I said, look, I remembered. I mean, it's only a 10-minute span that we're in the water at the minute, the temperature. So it wasn't like a long time, but there were people there, and I was talking. They were talking. I was enjoying it, enjoying the cold water. I'm sure I was quite present. But the tricks that I had planned for looking at the horizon and all kinds of things didn't happen until I was halfway up the beach. So that would be my coasting time, because it's a good time,
Yep. Yeah, and so that's an opportunity for a specific approach to your practice, and then different segments of your day. So you could use the word scenarios, Lauren, but it's different sections of your day. Work is a different section than the drive home. The drive home is a different section than cooking dinner. Cooking dinner is a different section than cleaning up at the evening. And so you can plan your practice to be specific around those things. Also with plenty of room for adaptability, because maybe we need to move to something that's a little bit unexpected, but at the same time, you're going to cook dinner. You know that you're going to have this period after dinner, and you're going to have this period before bed. So those are segments of your day that exist, and they're not necessarily battlegrounds. Remember that battleground is an area of more accumulated resistance. The scenarios are just your day. You're essentially just slicing up and segmenting your day so that you can prepare. Does that make sense? And so this is a complete practice. This is what I would do to maintain mindfulness throughout the day so that I could feel more peace. Any questions? Oh, and then so Sonia, I could talk about this more in depth, but so when I wake up, I go into what I call my deepest love, longest vision, and my longest reach, highest vision, deepest love. And if I'm talking about tea, then you can wake up and do whatever you want. It's just wake up and do something. It's wake up and engage your practice however you want to do that. And I can help you, if you have questions about, is this what you mean or not? But if you're going to do what I call hydrostasy, and so hydrostasy is my practice exactly. So I am prepared to offer exactly what I have done so that people can pick and choose. Maybe you want to take some things away, or maybe you're looking to recreate this effect that I call the hydrostatic effect. It's essentially balance. It's the feeling of peace. So even though I'm adapting to things, I still feel peace. Even though, I'm at work and I'm hearing something that I don't want to, I can still feel peace. Even though, something that did not meet my expectation that just occurred, I can still feel peace. And the reason is this hydrostatic bubble of peace that I have created around me. And I don't want that to sound too woo-woo, but yeah, it is what it is. So ultimately, when I wake up, I remind myself of my deepest love, and that is this life. And I the second I wake up, I don't waste a hot second. Like, my eyes open up and I am alive. In this moment, I can feel appreciation for this opportunity to exist. I am a trillion times a trillion synaptic connections, a trillion times a trillion potential cells of molecular DNA. Like, I'm a fucking miracle, and so is everybody. But this is something I remind myself of, because my deepest love is this being, this opportunity to express myself as a human being. Hey, I'm gonna embrace it. It's potentially quite temporary, so I'm gonna definitely embrace it and get the squeeze it. This is my life and I love it, so I'm gonna squeeze it. So that's the deepest love. The longest reach is a society where their minds are not their own enemies. So in this society, we are at the top of the food chain, but we don't kill each other. We don't steal from each other. We don't lie to each other. We're not trying to take advantage of each other, because in this imaginary scenario, humans can coexist. And that kind of gives me a feeling of hope, but I don't have to focus on this future. I just engage it visually, and then I just move on with my day. But it really does fill me with a kind of hope that the human race will survive. And then I have my highest vision, which is like a goal. And it has changed many times because I have reached those goals. But my current highest vision is a little art stand. And I'm selling my books, and I'm selling maybe some art from Ita and some art from people at work. And I'm just in this art stand and I'm just selling my stuff. So whether I have $1 billion in the bank or I have $15 in the bank, that's the vision. Now, if I have $1 billion in the bank, my stand could be in front of my tower in New York. I don't know. But it's still going to be my stand. And that's what I'm going to do. So they'll be like, wow, that's the CEO of the company selling his books in front of his tower. And I'll be like, yep, because that's my highest vision. And that doesn't change because of other things. So that's just my personal way to engage. And then I also begin belly breathing, because since I'm laying down, I really like the belly breathing. Does that make sense? So that's just my thing to do, but that is my engagement the moment that I wake up. I am embodying mindfulness and meditation. I'm not just flirting with it. I'm not just experimenting with it. I already know. So I'm embodying these principles. It doesn't make me, Jesus Christ superstar. It doesn't make me, Buddha. It doesn't make me this mythical creature. It just makes me a human being who is learning, who is bettering themselves, and who feels peace. And from peace, love, joy, vibrancy, it all just comes in. It's like a flower opening up to our attention. When we pay attention to it, it just opens up and we can receive it. And it's a form of collaboration more than control. All right, so any questions about these first points of establishing your daily tea practice? This line right here, I am holding out. I'll explain what that line is in a second. But so we have segmenting, we have identifying our battlegrounds, we have waking up and immediately engaging our practice, and then we have establishing our practice in terms of our toolbox. So we're going to set up our toolbox, and that will be my tricks of attention and my mantras, things that I can tell myself that is going to be more productive cognition than repetitive habitual thought that doesn't make me feel well, thought that is just trying to figure it out, thought that is constantly focusing on lack. Any thought that is getting down on yourself or getting down on another person is not productive. You will never think a negative thought about another person and that be beneficial for you. If a thought negative about someone else feels good to you, that is infatuation with ego. You are focusing on yourself indirectly by focusing on another person in a negative way. And that is severe psychological suffering. That is the worst state that a human mind can be in, is to get down on themselves and to get down on other people. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I don't know how. I'm a victim. I have been a victim of something, but I am not a victim. I don't carry victim energy. Yeah, maybe things have happened that were beyond my ability to directly influence, control, and I was a victim to something, but I'm not a victim. I need to adapt. I need to move. I have to find ways to elegantly negotiate the world around me, even when it's unfair. Do you see what I mean? So I'm not a victim, although I have been a victim of things. All right, so let's move on to another practice point. And so this is one that I'm interjecting almost as a point of hydrostasy, because it was essential for me, like absolutely essential. And so essential that I'm including it as a part of the practice, but it is a substitute dialogue practice. Is that how you spell dialogue, Gene? Dialogue, log, I don't know. Okay. So substitute dialogue is an opportunity. So I'm going to be super specific here. It is an opportunity for you to interrupt your repetitive, habitual stream of thought with something strategic. So you are now replacing your own internal voice with another voice because it's more beneficial than thinking repetitive thoughts that don't make you feel well. It is better than thinking in a habitual way that is just trying to control the world around you. So, for example, this right here, right now, can be an example of substitute dialogue. If you are sitting in a chair and you're listening to the sound of my voice rather than the sound of your own voice, you are substituting my voice for your own. And that can be very beneficial. An audiobook can do that. Listening to music can be a form of substitute dialogue. Even if the music doesn't have words, it can still interrupt the cognition. And then you start dancing and you start moving. All of that is interrupting what would otherwise be an opportunity to think a repetitive, habitual thought that doesn't make you feel well, and that is unproductive cognition. That is a form of interacting with your own mind that doesn't benefit you, and it doesn't benefit anybody around you to do that, to think repetitive thoughts, the same thoughts in the same order. It's not original. You've already thought it before. There's no point to think the same thought in the same order again and again and again and again. That's just a part of a habit that's attempting to control, that ultimately makes you feel unwell and uninspired. So substitute dialogue could be a wide variety of things. It could be a podcast. It could be an audio book. It could be reading. So if Gene reads, and that's words in his mind, that could substitute his own words. Now, I recommend reading the same books rather than just accumulating information. That can become toxic. I know a lot of people who really, and I was one of them, so I can see it as a reflection, of course, but when information, we're just accumulating and we're accumulating and we're accumulating, well, that can become a violation of the golden mean principle and can create an imbalance, and if it's sustained, it will cause suffering. So any questions about substitute dialogue? Does that make sense? It can be a very valuable tool if you choose to use it. If you're doing hydrostasy, you will take time every single day as a part of your day to listen to substitute dialogue. I did it. I would listen to Alan Watts. I would listen to Don Juan. I would listen to The Tao of Pooh was one of my favorite audiobooks because he had a cool British voice. The Alchemist, books like that, I would listen to them again and again and again, and I would learn something new from those books every single time because I'm changing, the book isn't. The book is the constant, it's the same book, but it speaks to me in new ways because I'm constantly changing. I may have to let the dog in here in a minute. Any questions about any of that so far? So we have establishing our practice the moment we wake up. We have establishing our toolbox tricks of attention, specific mantras that we can use throughout the day. We have identified battlegrounds. Maybe work today is a battleground, maybe driving to work, or maybe picking up the kids. They're noisy as shit, so you know that's going to be a battleground for you. So you plan. Segmenting, these are areas of the day. You know, this is your day. You do this day every day. You know, you go to work, you come home, you know your day. So you segment it so that you can plan specifically for what? Tricks of attention. Placing your mind into the present moment on purpose. That's what this entire practice is. That's how we embody mindfulness. Mindfulness is the ability to be present without necessarily thinking new thought streams about it. So I can be in this moment without necessarily thinking thoughts about this moment. And it's tricks of attention that will help you maintain that, help you embody that, help you perpetuate that, and help create that feeling of peace all throughout your day, not just in moments and segments. Substitute dialogue. Any questions, comments, or concerns about substitute dialogue? This, you can go to town on this. Like you can find somebody, it doesn't matter, that you find inspiring. I don't care who it is. It's not my garden to tend to. If you're doing hydrostasy, then I may make specific recommendations, such as listening to these classes again. That's why we do the free recordings, so that you can go back and you can listen, and that will interrupt what would normally be a repetitive habitual stream of thought, of cognition. Does that make sense? Any questions about that so far? Okay. So we'll go to the next practice point. This is really helping anybody who wants to do this practice create a complete all-day approach to their practice. So we have substitute dialogue, and then kind of doing my arrows back and forth. That way I have plenty of room for them. Whoops. This isn't in any particular order, by the way. This isn't like you do this first, you do this second. This is just the best way for me to describe it at this moment. So setting reminders. I would have other people remind me to do my practice. I would, and Lauren, we talked about this years ago, at least 2 years ago, right? A year or two ago, setting up note cards around the house. I did that because I wanted to remind myself of my practice so that I wouldn't forget. Objects of power, they help me remember my practice. Putting things in specific spots. When I'm at the dispensary, I have things set up in specific areas, crystals and little trinkets and note cards, and I set them up strategically for me to remind myself to be present, to remind myself to do my practice. Where is my mind, and did I put it there? More specifically, where is the direction of my attention, and has it been chosen on purpose? Because that is a type of quality of attention that is either occurring or it is not. You have either placed your attention there deliberately and on purpose, or it has just arrived. And the best way to make sure it's on purpose is to determine it in advance. If we determine it in advance, then there can be no question that I chose the color blue today to focus on, and that makes it a trick of attention. A point of attention, a valid point of deliberate cognition. You're choosing the direction of your attention in that moment. That's what this is all about. So set reminders for yourself. I wrote on the walls. Shayna had to paint over "there is no spoon" because I would remind myself right before I would start exercising, because that's the time when I would talk myself out of it. I would start to talk myself out of exercising, but then I would look up at the wall and there is no spoon. And then I would, oh, that's right. I'm just talking myself out of it again. Back to the practice, and then I would do the workout or do the exercise or whatever it is I wanted to do. Once I relaxed my mind, then I don't talk myself out of it, and then I end up just doing what I want to do. So set reminders. Does that make sense? Any questions about setting reminders throughout the day? Okay, so I'm going to use the restroom before I go into this final point and generate some questions if you have some, but this is your all day practice here. And then I'm going to add 2 more things to this line that is going to round out a practice that could be full on embodiment if you do it. So I'll be right back. Okay. So Sonia, there is no spoon is so in the tea practice, it's very general. So it's kind of just a framework for you to interject whatever the hell you want. So I interjected a mantra that is specific to me. It probably doesn't mean anything to anyone else. And that's okay, because there is no spoon had a meaning to me, and it would inspire me to feel a certain way, but it does come from the matrix. And so in the matrix, it says that it's not the spoon that bends, it's yourself. And so that would just remind me that I'm doing this, I'm creating this. And if I want it to bend, it will bend. If I want it to be straight, it'll be straight. So I would remind myself, basically, there is no spoon equal I can do this. And so that's why it would be there on the wall before I would exercise. I can do this. And that's how serious I am about my practice, that I will write on the fucking walls to remind myself, because I get this one opportunity to feel peace. I feel peace right now or I don't. That's binary. I can feel peace 2 degrees, but I'm either feeling it or I'm not. And when the mind is relaxed and when we're doing this practice, peace is a guarantee, because that's what we're doing. We're creating a mind that is not resisting the present moment, and that will feel like peace. In my vision of a society and that doesn't have resistance, they don't have a word they don't have the phrase inner peace. They don't need that phrase because they never created inner war. They never started kicking themselves in the face with their own cognition, so they don't need a word for the opposite of that. We do. Okay, so we've set reminders, and now we're going to do 2 things that will round out this practice, and it will be full embodiment. One of the most important things that we can do in this practice is to develop and establish what I call the voice of power. And so I'm going to write here, activate. And it's so important. Okay, that was weird. but I'm back. All right, so the voice of power is a little bit tricky to describe just very quickly, but very quickly, when your thought is working for you rather than against you, it is the voice of power.
Can't hear you, Ernest.
When your thought is, when it feels like it's still losing me, can you hear me now?
You're kind of coming
What's
in
that,
and
Lisa?
out. You're coming in and out. You sound like a robot half the time, and then we kind of
I
lost
don't
sound.
know. Oh,
Can't hear you. Talk. But that worked.
how about now?
No, you're cutting in and out. Robot-ish.
Maybe we can go to this one. How about
That's
now?
better. That's better.
Now.
Yep.
Oh, but I have no volume. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Perfectly.
Oh, that's because I turned the volume off. Okay. So back to this camera. Just going from one to the other. This one seems to be working for the moment, so I'll use this one. All right, so voice of power starts out as mantras, starts out as telling yourself true things, and then it becomes inner guru. It becomes a voice that is telling you what's what about the present moment. It doesn't arrive as questions. The inner guru isn't asking questions. Inner guru is telling. It can come through as an aha, as a knowing, as reaffirming what you know about the world around you, what you know about your practice, and things like that. So a critical aspect of this practice, and so this is super duper 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 important, and hopefully it makes sense, and then feel free to ask questions, and then we're going to go to the final point to complete this practice. And if you're doing all of this, you're going to find that this T practice is more tangible. It's more easy to approach when we have a clear perspective of what a complete practice might look like. So, and this is embodiment, by the way. This isn't just flirting. This isn't just fox walking for a little while. This is, I'm taking the principles of meditation, the principles of engaging the world around me, and I'm going to embody it by doing it all the time. That's the key. So the voice of power starts to tell you what's what. So another thing that you could do with the voice of power is to remind yourself of the practice, of where you're at in the practice. So Lisa, let's say that you are judging, or you're in the grocery store and you start to worry about what other people are thinking. What would the voice of power, what would be a mantra? What would be, if it's not a mantra, what would occur? What would you tell yourself? What would that voice say?
What was the scenario again?
You're in a grocery store and you start worrying about what other people are thinking. You start thinking about what they're thinking.
Well, there's no need for me to be thinking about what other people are thinking, because it's impossible that I could even know what they're thinking. So why am I even doing this?
Exactly.
That would be something that I would say to myself. I would just, there's just no point. It's pointless. It's
pointless. So that would be your voice of power. So Lisa's voice of power would remind her of a principle. I can't know what other people are thinking. They can lie to me. They can tell me whatever they want to tell me. They could be like, Ernest, you're the nicest guy in the whole world. And then when I'm not around, that fucking Ernest, I mean, right? So you never know. So that's an example of the voice of power. So let's say, I don't know, what are some other scenarios? Let's say that there's a lady in the lobby and she's yelling at me. And I tell myself, anything I say will make this worse. Say nothing. Anything I say will make this worse. Say nothing. That's a voice of power. Do you see? It's a form of productive cognition. I'm choosing to use my words to help me navigate the present moment. How about nobody is doing anything to me outside of physical touch? So there are certain things that are occurring at the dispensary. There's some things I have to take responsibility for. And so I remind myself that I have created this situation. Is it fair? Maybe not, but it's me. It's my output. So I have to take responsibility for all of my output, even when it's not, you know, as elegant. That's my job. That's my garden. That's my spider's web to tend to. I don't judge yours unless you ask me to, and I haven't asked anybody to judge mine. But it's there. I know it's there, and I see it. So I remind myself. So it's reminding yourself of principle. Everything is changing. So when I wake up sad, I don't try to change sadness. I don't try to control sadness. Why? Because the voice of power tells me sadness is already changing. Isn't everything changing? Isn't transience a law of the universe that we all agree with when we see it in a meme on Facebook? We're like, oh yes, everything is changing. That's so true. Well, isn't your sadness changing? Isn't your anger already changing? Isn't the emotion that you're creating right now already changing? Yeah. So all I need to do is direct that change with my attention, not with trying to control, not with attempting to manipulate. Instead, the direction of my attention is the direction where everything is going to go. So I just go back to my practice. That's another example of the voice of power. I can give you examples of what happens when you ignore inner guru and the voice of power. I've had the voice of power whispering in my ear throughout the time of me working at the dispensary, and there's several times where I chose to ignore that voice of power and I got screwed in the end because it will cause suffering. The voice of power is telling you what's what about the present moment. If you ignore that, well, good luck. But I would say that the voice of power is not intuition until the mind is not in resistance. Otherwise, you could just be talking shit to yourself. And there's a difference. Oh, but the dishes are out of my alignment. It's not a part of my alignment to do dishes and housework. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. Well, no shit. When is doing the dishes? That would be a good example of cherry picking. Yeah. Cherry picking is when you're ignoring inner
Learn
guru.
to make it feel good because I enjoy the feeling of cleanliness. So I focus on that when I do the dishes. So I don't focus on the resistance of not doing the dishes. I focus on the feeling of I like things, clean and organized. So yeah. So the resistance. So it feels good to me doing the dishes because I like that feeling.
And so if we go to a further form of training, which I call seers training, we'll start to get into a little bit of what Shayna just said, and I'll start to add little lines to our complete practice. But let's look at this. So I'm going to use Gene as an example, and he has done his practice to a T today. We're just doing an imaginary scenario. Gene woke up. The moment he woke up, here I am in this life, in this body. I am going to do my practice today to feel more peace. Okay, that's point one. Well, how the fuck am I going to do that? So Gene has a notebook by the bed. On one side of the paper, he has points of attention, and on the other side of the paper, he has mantras that will be beneficial to him today. He folds that piece of paper up and puts it in his pocket so that he can remember it throughout the day. He's getting it. As he is getting out of bed, as he's moving throughout his day, he has identified his battleground. He knows that today he has to ride the subway. And every time he rides the subway, it irritates the shit out of him, but not today. Today, we're going to use our voice of power. Today, we're going to segment. Today, we're going to get And those are opportunities to coast. Or he's going to watch a movie with friends. So he has segmented an area of the day that he knows should be, reasonably easy. He's going to be watching TV, he's going to be hanging out, and that's an opportunity to coast, and he knows that. So he's going to be very aware and cognizant of that. And he's going to have substitute dialogue ready. So he is going to have mantras ready, and he's going to be talking to himself in a more productive way. Substitute dialogue and activating voice of power go hand in hand. Substitute dialogue becomes the voice of power. But substitute dialogue, I would recommend that Gene take 15 minutes and listen to a class, or take 15 minutes and listen to Eckhart Tolle talk about the power of now. Fine, listen to Dalai Lama, whoever you find interesting. And that would be substitute dialogue. That will help the voice of power. Voice of power, I would recommend talking to yourself in a productive way. Remind yourself of the practice. And also, and then set reminders throughout the day, set reminders throughout the house, ask people to remind you, set reminders on your phone. Activating the voice of power can also look like this: when you identify your trap. So you have identified with it simply so you can move forward. So let's say Gene is at the grocery store and he's judging somebody's shopping cart. And he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Gene, that's othering. That doesn't serve me. So back to the practice. Does that make sense? And then here is the final point. And when you first begin this practice, it can look simply like checking in. All throughout the day, as often as you can remember, you just check in and you go back to your practice. That means check in, back to the practice. And what do I mean by back to the practice? I mean your point of attention, whether it's the horizon or whether it's maybe you have a stone in your pocket. But if you're doing this practice in anything past basic alignment, I mean counterbalance, warrior training, or seer's practice, those are the three other aspects to T and hydrostasy. And those 3 points, you will be adding a third thing that you have to do throughout the day, and that is the rule of 3. So if you're new to this practice, you're just checking in, back to the practice, check in, back to the practice, check in, back to the practice. If you're choosing to embody this practice, in addition to all of these things that we're doing throughout the day, you will rule of 3. The rule of 3 is very simple to explain. We are choosing at least 3 tricks of attention in the now moment while including words. We include a mantra. So that's one of your 3. I've already picked that for you. You're going to choose words, voice of power, productive dialogue, and 2 other points, because this area of resistance has so much momentum that you have to counter it with equal and opposite momentum. So if Gene is about to punch somebody in the face because he got so unconscious that he got angry, he will need to be so conscious to redirect that anger. He's not changing the anger. He's not declaring war on the anger. He's going back to the practice to a higher, to a more acute degree. More points of attention leaves less attention to think the bullshit that's pissing you off. So it's not magic, it's not voodoo, it's simply the mind doesn't do both very well. The mind doesn't engage the world around while simultaneously thinking a bunch of drama thought. If you think a lot of drama thought, you don't pay attention to the world around you. I can sneak up on you. You're not going to remember what's occurring. You will probably be more clumsy. You'll run into shit and you'll be like, oh my God, that was an accident. Nobody could have predicted that accident. Well, you could have been paying attention and that could have prevented the accident. So if this is a complete, and that's what today's workshop, we're talking about a complete tea practice. What does it look like? So Jerry, if you were doing a complete tea practice, you would have woken up and you would have immediately gone into your practice. Where is my mind and did I put it there? And then you're not going to half-ass it. You're not going to leave your practice to well-wishing, you know. This practice isn't a matter of luck. It's a matter of remembering. It's a matter of momentum. It's a matter of accumulation. That's a principle that we work with, the accumulation principle. What do you mean, Gene? Rule of three. 3 points of attention. Oh, because the mantra is one, and then just whatever 2 other points of attention: breathing, movement, my body. I can feel peace now. Everything is moving, so is this customer. See, I'm reminding myself, I'm using the voice of power. In 15 minutes, I'll be at home, and I'm not going to be worrying about this customer complaining about the M. Night Shyamalan movie. It's fine. So I'm talking to myself, I'm moving my hands, I'm breathing, I'm putting attention into my dantian, into my belly. All of that is deliberate, it's intentional, and it's a part of my rule of three. It's all on purpose. And the more I do that, the less I can think about how that damn customer, this, that, or the other thing. Why is this always happening to me? Yada, 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 poor me. You know, oh, the world, and this is an example, and, you know, people should be more like this, and people should be. You're othering. You're going way off into thinking about bullshit, and you're losing your practice when you do that. So the rule of three is rapid redirection back to the practice. And that's an important aspect of this practice. So if Jerry's doing this practice, she woke up, she intended her practice by writing it down. These are my points of attention. These are my mantras. I'm not half-assing it today. I got this shit written down. So I'm gonna remember. So she's established her toolbox. She knows that she has battlegrounds. Unless you're Eckhart Tolle and you've just dissolved your ego, you have battlegrounds. So yeah, I have my battlegrounds, and I've been doing this for a while. So I expect that you probably still have some too. Maybe you're segmenting. You know which parts of your day are going to be, you need a little bit more practice, or you feel that these are going to be areas where you're very likely going to coast. You know, Jerry is living in a nice environment. It's 80 degrees. The sun gets on our skin. We start coasting. Segment that. Point out what you love about that feeling on your skin. Choose specific points of engagement, even if you're really going to get into them in the present moment. Make sure that they're deliberate. Make sure that they're deliberate by intending them in advance. That's what I'm recommending. Intend it in advance to make sure that you're not hustling yourself and you're not coasting. I'm being very specific about that. So we're segmenting. I recommend substitute dialogue. At some point through your day, listen to someone else. Go ahead and substitute your own dialogue with someone else's. These workshops, these classes, these group studies, you go back and you listen to them on YouTube, you listen to the podcast. That's a perfect opportunity, but it doesn't have to be me. You can go listen to anybody. You can record yourself if you want to, and let that use yourself to interrupt your own stream of dialogue. You can do that. I don't see why not. I don't do that because my own voice annoys the hell out of me. So I'm not gonna, well, it doesn't really, but yeah. Set reminders. I don't care what they are. Have other people remind you, have children remind you, have things throughout your day. You know you're going to see this sign. That sign can remind you to be present. And not just be present, but choose a point of attention: geometry, defocused vision, breaking the horizon, the sky plus the ground at the same time. Your body, your elbows, your skin, the sound of music behind you, all of your senses, we're going to use them all. And then I recommend activating your voice of power by talking to yourself in a productive way. And even more specifically, call yourself out so that you can go back to your practice. So maybe Gene is looking at Ernest and he's like, man, why don't I have this yet? Like, Ernest, he's really good at this practice, but Why am I not good at this practice? I see Jerry over there. I see Ita over there, and they seem to be good at the, wait a second, I'm comparing and contrasting. That doesn't benefit me. Back to my practice in rule of 3. That's what I'm talking about. That's this practice. If you're not redirecting that type of thought, you're not doing this practice in its entirety. So Jerry, when you find yourself watching the news, or you find yourself, something that just seems so, and it's like, oh my God, do you see what's happening in the, I recommend rule of 3. And then you get this perspective and you're like, wait a second, this is just happening again. This is history repeating itself in a slightly different way, that this isn't really all that different than anything that's been occurring over the last 10,000 years. We just have new and different ways to express our psychological suffering. But it's not new. The core of the suffering is the same, a mind that is resisting the present moment, either unconsciously or on purpose. If it's unconscious, it's habit. If it's on purpose, it's cherry picking. So you can look at this and you can evaluate for yourself. Am I doing this practice in its entirety? And guess what? If not, that's okay. Any amount of this practice will be beneficial. Any amount of this practice eventually will add up to something that will help you in the long run. And I think we're all experiencing that. Otherwise, we wouldn't. Some of us have been here now for 3 or 4 years. Some of us have been here for a year. Some of us have been here for 2 years. Some of us have been here for a few months. The reason we keep coming back, and even the people who can't come to class but are still practicing, it is working when we do it. I recommend embodying it so that you do it all the time. And then guess what? It always works. And then before you know it, you're feeling peace all of the time. And then I'm just going to show you what that looks like. And then that's it. That's all I got for today. So this is an example, and I'm going to take a picture of this whiteboard, and then I'm happy to take questions if you have any, but that's going to be an example of the complete practice. And there could be some points that I add to that, depending on where you're at in your practice. If you're in seers training, then we're going to start focusing on the feeling of the third ring of power. And that could become a new point of attention. You can reaffirm the feeling. You can even start to set a mood. And that's starting to get to warrior training and seers training. So that's a little bit down the road, but we can add more things. And when you start focusing on peace, there's more peace. And when there's more peace, there's more love and connection. When there's more love and connection, then you can feel it all the time. And guess what? You'll be very happy most of the time. Like, I don't care what people say about me. Like, I'm happy most of the fucking time. Am I happy all of the time? No. But I always feel peace. So this is what I call inner peace, the circle of peace. It's just this little circle in the middle, right? And outside of it is a bubble. And I call that the hydrostasy bubble. It also looks like a Pokemon ball. Somebody told me that, but I don't know shit about Pokemon. So, and then we have extreme over here, and we have extreme over here. Okay? If I exist in any of these extremes, it will cause suffering. The longer that I exist in the extreme, the more attachment, the more clinging, the more trying to control, I will suffer. So Buddha was partially correct. I love Buddha. Don't, like, I'm not, he's not rolling over in his grave, because the very likely, never mind, I won't say that. So Buddha, thanks. But the source of suffering is not attachment, because attachment has a source, and it's existing and perpetuating an extreme. When we exist and we perpetuate in an extreme, that will cause an attachment, that will cause clinging, that will cause the number one habit of the human mind, attempting to control, which is the cause of all male aggression, is the mind's attempting to control, which leads to the aggression, which leads to the, well, excuse me, the imbalance leads to the attempt to control, and then the attempt to control leads to the aggression. So And that's Freudian psychology there. It's a product of society and biology. It's not one or the other, it's both. Now, what T is postulating is that there is no such thing as unexcelled perfect enlightenment. I covered that in what I call the deity effect, or the guru effect, where people start judging you. They're like, well, Ernest, he said fuck. A guru wouldn't say the F word, so he's not enlightened. He's not spiritual. Yeah, that I'm not holding myself to other people's erroneous standards, so I'll upset that setup right now. But the idea is that there is no getting there. There is no moment where I will ever not have my practice to do. It may be easier, I may be embodying it, it may require very little effort on my part, but that I'm still doing it or I'm not. It's still on purpose or it isn't. I will be 110 years old and still doing this practice, only it's preferred. I want to. Exactly, Shayna, if I'm not doing it, I feel icky. I feel like, oh no, I'm going back towards unconsciousness, towards trying to control, towards a life that is literally just a leaf at the mercy of the wind, accumulating things and stuff and finding my happiness through artificial circumstances that I think I need to continue to recreate. That's a trap. It's the trap of human history. So I have upset that setup. I always feel peace as I learn to navigate the world around me. And it's this whirlwind that I'm constantly adapting to. As long as I'm within this circle, I can still feel peace. And as long as I can still feel peace, I can adapt. So I got suspended from work. And that got me right out here of my hydrostasy bubble where I did not feel peace. I was offended. It hurt my feelings. And what is that? That's self-importance. That's attachment to the construct of self. And guess what? I'm not Buddha. I can accept that. That's a part of my spider's web, and that's okay. I go back to my practice. I rule of three, and then I go back towards peace. So although, my body and my mind responded in a way that wasn't peace, my practice takes me back towards peace, and I rule of three. So the moment that I saw myself and where I was, I went right back to my practice, the rule of three, and I went back towards the center, and I have more to navigate, more to adapt to. I'm always too much of this, too little of that. I'm a physical entity, so I will get sick, I will get old. I'll start to decay physically. That's just it's just the nature of biological existence. So I'm not going to create a problem out of that, but I do need to adapt to that. I do have to move. And hopefully the more present and the more relaxed my mind is, the more elegantly I adapt to those things. So Ernest, 10 years ago, I would have burnt that dispensary to the ground. I would have been so pissed off that I would have blamed everybody around me, and I probably would have gone towards violence 10 or 15 years ago. Now I go back to my practice. I go back to inner peace. I realize where I made the mistake, and the mistake was forgetting the practice. That's it. And then I go back and I feel more peace and I learn. And the next time I'm in social situations, I'll be more aware of the energy that I'm putting out there. So my interaction with other people, female coworkers, male coworkers, will be more elegant the more that I learn, the more that I remember my practice. That's how I express knowledge unto wisdom, is the practice. That's when I have the opportunity to do that, is because I remember my practice. So this practice, you can forget. If you want to be Buddha, you're going to have to go practice Buddhism. If you want unexcelled perfect enlightenment, I don't know what that is. I don't see that. You got to go do that. If you want to level up, if you want to transdimensionally, vibrationally reach the next level of Alpha Centauri, hey, go float your boat. That's fine. I'm not here to tell you otherwise. But that's not necessarily what this practice is about. This practice is so that a human being can find peace. If the human being has peace in the present moment, they can adapt. Does that make sense? That's important. If I am at peace, I can adapt. If I'm at peace, I can adapt in flow without trying to control. If I'm at peace, I can adapt in flow without trying to control, which means I can learn. And in the future, imaginary future, time has passed. If I am present and I feel peace, then I can remember what I learned and express it unto wisdom. So the next time, so I'm sitting at a job, and biologically, maybe a female of physical attraction walks by and they're like, "Hey, Ernest, you're the best thing since sliced bread. You're the cutest, smartest, sexiest thing I've ever seen in my whole life." And I'll be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. While that's all flattering, where is my mind now? Where is my practice now?" You see what I mean? I have my battlegrounds, you have yours. And it's all meant to adapt so that we can. So here's the gist. If you feel peace, then you can adapt. Adapt to what? What is happening now? If I can adapt to what is happening now, I can move more elegantly, I can learn, and I can change over time. And that is evolution. What is changing over time? My mind, my ability to adapt. That is called the evolution of consciousness. The mind is allowed to change. Our ideas are allowed to change. The way we view the world is allowed to change. It moves with the world as it moves. That's it. And that's all this practice is promising, is peace. And from peace flows connection. The feeling of connection is love. What comes from sustained love is vibrancy and joy and happiness. I feel happy most of the time because I feel peace most of the time. And when I feel sadness, I still feel peace. And if I get too far away from peace outside of my bubble, I will redirect, rule of three, take a fucking time out. Ernest is AWOL for a few minutes because I got to take care of this. My mind is slipping, folks. So I got to go back to my practice. That doesn't make me better. That doesn't make me a master. That doesn't make me a guru. That doesn't make me Jesus Christ superstar. That doesn't make me Dalai Lama, Eckhart Tolle, Deepak Chopra, Lewis Hayes. I don't know who these people are. I've never met them. But I know where my mind is. I know that I feel peace. And I know that I am adapting and learning. And every day, my mind is evolving. That's all we can ask for, is the evolution of consciousness, not unexcelled perfect enlightenment, not leveling up. It implies that one day you have not leveled up and now one day you have, and now all of a sudden you're leveled up. Who sees that? I don't see that. I don't see people leveling up. I don't know what the fuck that is. That sounds like an idea. That sounds like more concept. Okay, so that is T, the complete practice. That should give at least a snapshot of that's what I do. I wake up, I engage my practice, I maintain my practice. If I forget, I go back to my practice with the rule of three. And the result, I feel more peace. And from peace, I feel connection to the world around me. I feel my life more than just think about it. And now I can focus on that feeling. And I will be 110 years old. I will be transitioning to something new, dying, and I will look at my life and I felt it. I engaged it. I moved with it. I found the value in it. I squeezed it, embraced it, rather than just letting it float by while my attention is tuned in on my career or, my legacy or my problems or what I think other people should be doing. It's a trap. The only way we can upset that setup is right here with our mind and our body and our spirit. And when those three things are aligned, there are no three things. There is one thing. And that one thing can be felt. And that feeling is a feeling of balance, a feeling of, I'm not perfect, but I got this. Like, I'm going to learn and I'm going to do better and I'm constantly going to improve. And improve, I'm putting that in air quotes. But alignment, more in alignment with your desire, more in alignment with the world moving around you as it moves around you. So that is T, the complete practice. And that's pretty much what all of this is designed to do, is to just help us remember, where is your mind and did you put it there? It can be to degrees, but the answer is either yes or no. So Jenny, when I'm at work and Moses tries to tap me on the shoulder, I am either present or I am not. When I'm in the break room and I'm eating, I'm either present or I am not. When I'm sitting at the front desk, I am either present, choosing my deliberate attention, or I am not, at least to a degree. Maybe I'm talking to people, but in the background, I have my body. I can feel it. And so I'm simultaneously paying attention to my body while I do everything else. Now we're starting to get into some different stuff here. Same stuff, but different stuff. And I'll start to add more lines to that chart, because now you can start to focus on the feeling of peace. You can start to focus on the feeling of magic vibrancy. You can start to focus on the feeling of what it's like to be one with the whole universe. A feeling, not a thought, not a concept, not a tricky sentence that you think you understand, that's just more words on top of words, that's understanding words. No, it's a feeling that can be felt. Infinity can be felt, and it feels like timelessness. So when Gene looks at the kids and he sees that this thing about age and how, hey, this is really tough stuff to describe, but when you look at young people, you can just see this timelessness, this you know, they're still young and they're still expressing this, and as long as there's human beings, this will be expressed, and there's this timeless edge to what's occurring. That's infinity. You can feel infinity if you pay attention to it. You can feel vibrancy. I would call that life force, chi, prana. You can feel that. And when you feel it, you can pay attention to that feeling, and it becomes more pronounced in your experience. You feel it more. No words are necessarily required for that. You don't need words. You don't need explanations. You don't need definitions. You don't need, you know, ancient understandings. You don't need, the stars don't have to tell you that. You can feel that, or you don't, and it's happening now. Does that make sense? But just like the weather, you know, I can look outside and I want to know what the weather's going to be like today, because I'm going to go for a walk. And so I want to know if it's going to rain. Maybe it will, and I'll need to adapt. Maybe it won't, and I'll need to adapt. I kind of look at astrology the same way. Astrology is a form of predicting the weather, and it can be very beneficial. But then again, I'm still going to have to adapt to whatever is occurring when it occurs. And this is my mind. I am a creator. I'm a conscious creator. There is nothing predetermined that can explain what I will choose to do, because what I choose to do is free will. It's free choice. It has never been predicted. It has never been, there is no algorithm. There are no stars that will predict where I put my mind. That is an act of free will. That is an act of conscious, deliberate attention and creation. And while the weather report may be very beneficial, and so will the astrology report, it can be very beneficial, it can really help. Ultimately, I will still need to adapt with this mind, with this attention, no matter what it is. And that upsets the setup. When I do that, now I am the creator. I am looking into the unknown and making it known. I am the one that is shining my light into the corners of the infinite. I get to do that. That is the definition of free will and conscious creation. It is creative, meaning that maybe it has never been done before, meaning that nobody could have predicted it. But with that said, before I go for a walk, I do like to get the weather report. I am the alchemist. Exactly. There is no multiplicity other than the way that we look at things. Our mind divides things up, but there is no person that I want to be different from the person that I am, different from the person that I'm going to be, different from the person, different from the person. No, there is the totality of everything that exists, and that is happening now. I'm a part of that. I am a part of the I am, and I always have been, and I always will be, even when it moves and changes to something unrecognizable. And all of these things still have value though. So let's take something that I don't do very often, but let's take fortune telling, reading the future. I don't put anybody in a box. I think anything is possible. Anything that we have imagined is potentially possible. Can it be taught? I don't know. Can it be learned? I don't know. By definition, mysticism can't be taught until it's taught, and then it's not mysticism anymore. It's this weird thing that's in between mysticism and science, and they both have value. So it all has value, but it's the value that I give it, because I am the creator. I am the I am. I decide what gets value in my experience and what doesn't. But all of it could have value. It could definitely help me prepare for a battleground when my fortune teller tells me that Gene is coming over tomorrow. And I'm like, what? Gene's coming over tomorrow? The fortune teller said so. Well, I better get ready. And then I get ready, and then Gene comes over. I still have to adapt. Gene came over. The fortune teller was right. I still have a job to do. Where is my mind, and did I put it there? So the tea practice is really something that can go with everything, with anything that you do, anything that you learn, anything that you like. You can combine the tea practice. Where is my mind, and did I put it there? All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Is that a pretty good overview of what this practice kind of looks like? And then even a little bit of what it does, like what's the result from this practice? Peace, more peace, a voice of power where the voice will remind you of what's what. Ernest, you're not Buddha. You don't have to hold yourself to other people's standards. You do you. You give your best effort. You pay attention to your moment happening now, and you let other people worry about what they want to worry about. That's not my garden to tend to. You see what I mean? The voice of power can be very beneficial. I could. Yeah, Ida, I can. I could put that board into chat group. Which one? This one? Oh, I got to save this one. Oh, not this one. We've done this one several times. This is the hydrostasy bubble. And so I'm going to say this and then we can go. The hydrostasy bubble implies embodied inner peace. So this idea of inner peace is real. It is something that can be a part of every single person's life in the world today. They don't have to become a monk. They don't have to go to an Aborigine tribe in the forest and drink ayahuasca. You don't have to give sacrifice to the moon goddess unless you want to. You can do all of these things, by the way, but it's not necessary. It's not absolutely necessary. You can do whatever you want to do, however you want to do it, because you're the creator. This is your life experience, but it's the quality that we do it with. Are we doing it with presence, with mindfulness, with creativity, with a voice of power? That's the difference, is the quality in which we're doing it. And so I am prepared to say that practicing tea, especially practicing hydrostasy, is a path to inner peace. Not temporary inner peace, embodied lifetime of peace. Peace with a little bit of sadness, peace with a little bit of irritation, peace with a little bit of excitement, peace with a little bit of happiness, but still peace in the center while we move around it. It is possible because I'm living it. Am I perfect by somebody else's standards? No. Like sometimes I get pee on the toilet seat. I'm not Buddha. So it is what it is. But Very often I remember, here I am in this bathroom, in this moment, there are women, so I will lift the toilet seat. And this would be a whole nother workshop, but when we start talking about behavioral change will occur. It's just not trying to force and control. I don't leave the towel on the bed anymore, unless I'm picking them up off the floor. And then sometimes I do make a pile on the bed of clothes, but that's different than just leaving the wet towel on the bed. I don't do that anymore because I am learning. And that's a very small example, but the dishes are getting done because I am learning, right? I'm going to go to work and I'm going to be a little bit more mindful, and I'll always be learning, always adapting, always moving, always growing. The roots are always extending. The mind is always of the beginner because I came into this world paying attention to the present moment. So if in this moment I'm simply just paying attention to the present moment and engaging it, I have the mind of the beginner. You see what I mean? It's all there. All of the ancient philosophy from the last 10,000 years is in tea, except for the deity effect. We don't create this vision of perfection where thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, right thought, right action, right this, right that. No, 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 no. If you feel peace, you will make a connection. If you make a connection, empathy will flow, compassion will flow, kindness will flow, caring will flow. Those are natural for humans. We don't need all of that aggression. We can redirect that. All right, well, that's all I got for you guys. Last moment for questions, comments, or concerns before we head out of here. I am going to do some posting of videos today, Jenny. I promise today we will get several videos posted, at least 3, starting with this one. So if I were going to work today, I would take an object of power, something to physically remind me of my practice. I would have a note card. You've seen me, I have note cards. I have, if you look in the notebook that's in the front desk, there's a red envelope. And inside that red envelope is my note card for the golden line, so that I remember, because that's my practice. I do it. And every now and then I say some dumb shit. And then I'm like, whoa, 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 Ernest, where was your mind just then? Back to the practice. So I would have an object of power. I was asking people to remind me. I want people to kind of test me a little bit, not test me, but Ernest, where's your mind? Did you put it there? So I don't mind people reminding me. And Jenny, I don't mind people holding me accountable when I'm not. So when I feel myself getting out of the bubble, someone saying, Ernest, you're getting away from peace, homie. That's true. You don't have to judge me too harshly, but to hold, each other accountable to a certain extent, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to hold you accountable unless you ask me to, but I'm okay with it. Because that also helps to dispel the guru and deity effect. I am not a guru. I am not your deity. I am just a person who has suffered enough, and I figured it out. Like I figured out how to feel peace. It's not figuring out. It's more just remembering, and then remembering to remember. That sounds like a catch-22, remembering to remember. All right, well, I am going back to teaching full-time. So very soon, you're going to see some of the ideas that we have being expressed. I'm going to be doing one-on-ones again. And so I'll do one-on-ones because now we have a complete practice. So if Gene wants to do a one-on-one, hey, where are we in this practice? We know exactly where to go. We know exactly what to do. I can help him establish his practice. I can even help hold him accountable. That's something that we can do together. Accountability, it's a buddy system. Stronger together is one of the theories that we as human beings, we do work really well together. Human beings in general are creatures that are meant to work together. We're not isolated creatures. Human beings evolved on this planet by working together. And so this group study or workshop is an example of that. We're working together. You all help me stick to my practice, and I can help you stick to yours. And it's a group effort. So we're going to be doing that, and yeah, you'll see a whole bunch more activity as I go full time. So it's going to be just like I did in 2017, but with a whole lot more focus, and I'm not trying to control. So yeah, I'm not going to be reaching, and I'm not going to be trying to do anything. It'll be much more relaxed than that.
Today was very clear, Ernest. I felt that the way you described the whole day and the segments have really helped. And yeah, you could pick certain parts of the day where you have a struggle and actually talk about it. Where before, I find personally for me in the beginning it was all a bit abstract until you do it, until you practice it, and then you can really feel it, and it becomes really real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are certain principles that I have kind of leaned out. I'll add it back as we go along, but it's just not necessary in the beginning, such as the accumulation principle. We're still working with these principles. It's just I'm talking about them a little bit less because it's not as important to the actual practice. And then when it becomes more real, and then I'll talk about it because we're doing it. Yeah. Awesome. All right, well, you guys have a great rest of your day. I think I have a dentist appointment. I'm not sure if that's today or next week, but I'll find out when they send me the reminder. But I will see you guys again soon. Jenny, I'll work with you tomorrow, hopefully. Wait, what's today? I don't even know what today is. Oh no, you're off Thursdays and Fridays. I'll see you on Saturday. But yeah, have a great day. I'll see you guys again soon. I'm going to put this up for replay, and that's that. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.